We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph in Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 73a. On the previous summit, the Brisa says that if a person is bringing merchandise to an area where he can sell it for a higher price, he's trying to make money, and his friend finds him and his friend says, just give me the merchandise, I'll take it to that place, I'll sell it for that price, I'll use the money to make more investments, make more money, and at a particular date, I'm going to pay you that amount of money. So the Brisa now continues and says it depends. Bereshus mocher mutter, if when the person is taking this, the seller, meaning the original person who had the goods, he is taking achrayas on all of the items, so then it is going to be mutter. However, bereshus lokeach, however, if the buyer is taking responsibility for all of the items as he is traveling with them, so then also then it is going to be forbidden. And Rashi explains, Bereshus mocher, kivol olav mocher achrayas haderech. If the seller accepts upon himself responsibility for the goods while they are traveling, so then mutter, then it's going to be permitted. Why? De'ein kan milva ad shetimacher, because really it's not a loan until the moment where this buyer actually sells the merchandise. At that point in time, he's getting a loan of that amount of money. V'chol ma shenimkar biyoker, and anything that it's sold at a higher price. Again, the whole point is it's being taken from an area where the prices are lower to an area where the prices are higher. But whatever it's sold for, shall bailam harishonimu. So that's really the original owners, because the owner had achrayas all the way up until the moment that it was sold, and so therefore the loan amount is exactly the same amount that is going to be paid back. However, Bereshus lokeach asar. However, let's say the merchandise is given over to the lokeach and he is taking responsibility. So right now the merchandise is worth much less. He's bringing it to an area where it's worth more, and essentially because he's being given a loan, that's why he's taking responsibility over here, and that's why he's paying back more. As Rashi explains, from this moment, it's already a loan. He's being lent the merchandise at a lower price. And then he's going to pay back more because he's going to sell it for more in this other location, and he's going to pay back more, and that's considered to be interest. And the Brisa continues, Hamolech Peiros mimakom lamakom. Let's say a person is taking produce from one place to another. Again, the same idea, he's going to make a profit. Matzo Chaveiro, his friend finds him, V'yamarlo, he says to him, to namely, give me the produce, Vani alalach Peiros sheyeshli ba'oso makom, and I happen to have produce in that place where you're taking these Peiros, I'll give you those Peiros that I have in that particular place. And so the Brisa says, Im yeshlo Peiros ba'oso makom, if he indeed does have Peiros in that particular place, so then mutter, then it's going to be mutter. V'imla, but if not, usher, it's going to be a problem. Essentially, it's going to be a case of sa'ah b'sa'ah. It's like he's lending him a certain amount of produce, and then he's going to give back that same amount of produce, but the produce that he's giving back at that time is going to be worth more. That would be problematic unless he actually has the peiros in that place. Rashi explains, to namely va'ochlim kan, he says, give them to me, I'm going to consume them over here. Vani aleloch lizman ploni mi peiros sheyesh li sham, and then I'm going to give you, I have the produce over there, I'll give you those peiros. So yesh lo sham mutter, so if he actually has the peiros there, it's mutter. The mehashta ukminu b'reshusei, because essentially, he's basically saying, you're the owner of those peiros right now. There's no real loan over here. It's almost as if he's immediately paying him back. And Rashi notes, v'afagav de lo moshech, now even though there was no kinyan, he didn't actually pull the peiros, so it's not like he's actually the owner, but saw b'saw lav ribis ketzutzahi. This is a case of saw b'saw. Again, he's taking like one saw of produce and he's giving back the same amount of produce. That's not considered fixed ribis. El avak ribis d'Rabbanan. That's just considered avak ribis. It's only midrabbanan. V'chiyesh lo lo gazer. And therefore, if he actually had the produce in that location, the Rabbanan did not make the gzeira. But ein lo. But if he did not have the peiros in that location, ein lo bo so makam aser, then it's going to be forbidden. The v'schar hamtanaso, because essentially it's because of the fact that there's a delay. Because of the fact that he's lending him nasan lo zeb and makam hayoker, he's giving it to him in the more expensive place, which essentially is going to be considered ribis midrabbanan. And the Brisa continues, V'chamorin malim b'makam hayoker kiv'makam hazol ve'enon choshishin. The donkey drivers are allowed to sell in areas where the prices are high, but they can sell at the cheaper rate, and that is not a concern. And Rashi explains, V'chamorim emalim b'makam hayoker kiv'makam hazol ve'en choshishin, hachamorim hamistakrim b'tvua. These are donkey drivers who make a profit by taking the grain to areas where it's more expensive. Umeviyim imakam hazol l'makam hayoker. They bring it from the more inexpensive place to the areas that are more expensive. Mutter lehem likach mos mibale batim ashirim. They're allowed to take money from the wealthy balabatim, but makam hayoker, in a place really where it would sell for a higher price. Al menas litein lehem lizman ploni, on the condition that they're going to give at a certain time, they'll give the produce. There's going to be a delay over here. Almanas litin lem lisman ploni haperos kishar mokum hazol, and they're going to give it to them at the cheaper rate. V'ein choshen sheyehei ribis schar hamtanas mos, and they do not have to be concerned that this is ribis, because essentially they've received a loan over here, they're receiving the money in advance, and they're giving a cheaper rate than what the going rate is in this location. They're going to give the produce later on at a cheaper rate. Kin mefarish v'yazal, as the Gemara will now explain why that's not a problem of ribis. The Gemara says, my time, and what's the reason? Rav Papa says, nichuluhu demigluhu tara. It's good for them to do this because then they are recognized in the marketplace. Rav Acha Breder Ravika, Rav Acha, the son of Ravika, he says a different reason. Nichuluhu, it's good for them, the mosli gabayu, because the people that they have business dealings with are going to give them cheaper rates in such a situation. And Rashi explains, my timer apapamar nichaluhu demigluluhu tara means as follows: Sha'al yedei ma'osav shelzeh, because of the fact that these merchants, these donkey drivers, are getting money from these wealthy individuals, so therefore heim nikarim sochrim, so they're recognized as merchants. Umakirim osam balabatim shel mokum hazol, and the balabatim who are in the area where everything is cheaper, they recognize them. V'nosan lehem b'hakafa, and they'll give them things on credit. Umistakrim etzlam, and therefore they'll be able to make money with them. And Rashi says the point over here is, because of the fact that having business dealings with these balabatim and getting the money from them improves their likelihood of being able to do business, so even if there would be no delay, let's say there wouldn't be a loan over here, let's say the balabayas is giving the person money and he wants immediately at the cheaper rate, they would still do it. It would be good for them. It would be worth it for them to be agents and to accept achrayas for that. That would be worth it for them in this situation in terms of their longer-term business goals, and therefore it has nothing to do with a loan being extended over here that they're giving the cheaper rate. And since it has nothing to do with a loan, that's why it is permitted. That's Rav Papa's explanation. And the second explanation was the explanation of Rav Acha Breder Ravika. He said, the Mosli Gabayu, which means B'nei Mokum Hazol, the people who live in the area where everything is cheaper, Kishashomin She'ein Elam Mistakrin, but when they hear that these merchants are not actually making a profit because the merchants promised to give at the cheaper rate, the merchants essentially took money and told these wealthy balabatim that they're going to give them at the cheaper rate, so those people who live in the area where everything is cheaper, Mosli Gabayu, they'll give them an even cheaper rate than the going rate, because they don't want these people to draw away from them and not do business with them. They're going to want their business, and so therefore they're really going to make a profit over here anyway, because where they're going to go, they're going to get a cheaper rate, and therefore it's not considered that they're giving these wealthy balabatim a cheap rate because of the loan. They're really giving them a cheap rate because they know when they go to this other location, they're going to get the same kind of treatment. They're going to get the cheaper rate than usual. And the Gemara continues, Mai Beinayu, what's the practical difference between the reason of Rav Papa and the reason of Rav Acha Breder Ravika? And the Gemara says, Ika Beinayu, the difference is, Tagra Chadata, let's say you're talking about a new merchant. Rashi says, Tagra Chadata, Tagra She'eno Nikra Adayin. Let's say it's a merchant that people don't recognize yet. Laman Damar Demiglu Luhutara, according to the one who says the reason why they want this business arrangement is because it opens up the marketplace for them. So Ika, so that's actually a real reason over here as well, and therefore it's not considered to be ribbis. They're giving these wealthy balabatim, they're giving them a good rate because that makes them more recognized. But Laman Damar de Mosli Gabayo, but according to the one who says that if they give the balabatim this rate, so then when they go to this area where the rates are cheaper, they'll get an even more discounted rate. So Leka, so that doesn't apply in this case. They came and Deino Nikr, because since this is a merchant that's not yet recognized, they came and Deino Nikr Lehem Ein Ma Minim Bidvarov. So the merchants in that area, they don't necessarily trust him. Shehu knows them b'makomo bezol v'lo Mosli Gabay. They don't trust him that he's actually giving a cheaper rate to the wealthy balabatim, and therefore they're not going to give him a discounted rate, so it wouldn't apply. According to Rav Acha Breder Ravika, this reason would not apply by a new merchant. And the Gemara continues, Besura Azli Arba, in Surah the wheat went for 4 saw per sela. Bekafri, but in Kafri, Azlan Shisa, a person could get 6 saw per sela, meaning to say the rate was cheaper in Kafri. So Yoiv Rav Zuzi Lechamri, Rav gave money to the donkey drivers. Vekaval Alei Onsa de Orch, and Rav accepted responsibility for the money in terms of while the money was on the road, and so therefore the loan was not given to the donkey drivers until they actually bought the product, and therefore it should not have been a problem of ribbis in such a situation, because exactly what they're buying is exactly what they owe Rav. V'shakal minayu chamisha. But what happened was Rav didn't take it at the discounted rate of 6 sa per sela. He took it at a rate of 5 sa per sela. And so the Gemara asks, V'nishkol shisa, but why didn't he take it at 6 sa per sela? It's not a problem. Since he took responsibility for the money on the road, he's only giving them the loan at that exact rate when they sell it, essentially 6 sa per sela, and that's what they owe him. So there shouldn't be any problem of ribbis taking 6. And so the Gemara says, Adam chashav shani. The Gemara says Rav was an important person. By an important person, it's different. He has to be stricter. He can't even have that there's an appearance of ribbis, an appearance of interest. Rashi explains, Besura Azlan Arba Grive Bezuza. In Surah, it was 4 sa again per zuz per sela. Bekafri Shemakom, Kafri was the name of a place. Azlan Shisa Grive Bezuza. It was 6 sa per zuz. And so the Gemara said, Vinishkol Zuza. Well, why doesn't he just take it at the rate of 6? Kavan de Mekabala unsa de Urcha. Since Rav is accepting all responsibility while it's traveling. So Rashi says, Ein kan ribis. There's no problem of interest over here. Vafilu lo kibalala unsa de Urcha. And even if he hadn't accepted responsibility for onsam on the road, Katani, we already learned, Hachamorim malim b'makom hayoker k'v'makom hazol. The donkey drivers are allowed to, even in an area where the rates are more expensive, they're allowed to give it at the lower rates, and that's for the reasons we gave above, the reason either of Rapapa or Ravach B'rei Ravika. So there's a double reason why really Rav could have taken at the cheaper rate, and so the Gemara answered the reason why he didn't do that was because he's an Adam Chashiv, he wanted to be extra strict. And the Gemara continues, Boy minei Ravasi mi Rav Yochanan. Ravasi asked Rav Yochanan the following question, Ma'u lasos begrutos kain. What's the halacha with scraps of metal? Can you do the same thing? Meaning the leniency that we have by donkey drivers, that again, in an area where the rates are higher, you can give them money and actually take it out at the lower rate for the various reasons we gave above. Does that apply to scraps of metal as well? Amar Lei said to him, Bikish Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi lasos kain b'chlei pishtan. Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi wanted to do the same thing by linen garments. V'lo hinichu Rabbi did not allow it. Rabbi said it's something that's only allowed by wheat. Iko diamri, there are those that say a slightly different version. Bikish Rabbi lasos b'grutos kain. Rabbi wanted to do that with scraps of metal. V'lo hinichu Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi, but Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi did not allow that. And Rashi explains, Ma'u lasos b'grutos kain. Can you do that with scraps of metal? Meaning b'shar pragmatia, by other merchandise. Could go in shivrei zav, v'chesef. Let's say you have broken gold or silver, sharmine matchas, or other kinds of metal. Mi amrinan tavua demidi deshchiachu da'azli v'aso. Do we say maybe by grain when it comes to something like wheat, which is something that it's very common? Kol shait, you find it all the time. So amrinan. So then we say nichaluhu de miglutara. We give the reason either of rapapa. It's good for them that they're recognized in the market. Inami de mosli gabayo, or in the area where they go, they'll get an even more discounted rate. We say that by wheat because it applies by wheat. Aval shar pragmati, but other merchandise, leka giloitara, you don't have this concept of giloitara. V'lo oz legabayu, when they don't give a discounted rate. The misha macher lo achshav, because the person who's selling it to him now, lo yimcher lo lamacher, isn't the same guy that's going to sell it to him tomorrow. Upragmati shalokach hayom, ein lokach lamacher. The merchandise he bought today is not the same merchandise he's going to buy tomorrow. It's not something that would generally apply to other merchandise, and the Gemara says indeed that's the case. We do not apply this leniency to other merchandise. And the Gemara continues, Pardesa, when it comes to an orchard, the idea over here is that the buyer is giving money in advance for the produce in the orchard. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Rav Asar Shmuel Shari. Rav says it's forbidden, because again, it looks like ribbis. By the time he gets the produce, it's worth more than he actually paid. Shmuel says it's permitted. Rav Asar Kaven de Lakamei Shavya Tvei Mischazik Yagar Notole. Rav says it's prohibited, since at the time that he gets it later on, it's worth more. It looks like a situation where because he gave him the money early, he essentially extended him a loan. That's why he's getting back more. It looks like a situation of ribbis. Shmuel Shari, but Shmuel says it's permitted. Kavan to have a beit tiyua, since you have the possibility that it's going to spoil. You have the possibility that there is a loss on the side of the buyer, who effectively is the lender in this case. So lo michzi ki agar notrele, it doesn't look like a situation of agar notrele. It doesn't look like a situation of ribbis. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Shimi Bar Chia. Rav Shimi Bar Chia says, Umodi Rav would admit that it's permitted, B'Torah, when it comes to oxen. Again, we'll see Rashi. By oxen, the nafish pesidaya, where there's a great possibility of loss. So in that situation already, again, since there's a possibility of loss, it's not a problem of ribbis. Rashi explains, Pardesa liknos yayin min hakerem. The case over here is he's trying to buy wine from a vineyard. B'damim pechusim. He's trying to buy it at a low rate. Kol peiros shana zu bekach v'kach. He's essentially saying, I want all the produce of this year from this vineyard. I want it for this particular rate. V'lochen achar shein bosor smadar aval adayin lo higia lebikor. He buys it at a time where it's already partially ripened, but it hasn't fully ripened. and so he's buying at a discounted rate. Rav says it's prohibited. Demishum hakdamas mos lezman habotzer, because of the fact he's giving the money earlier than the time of the harvest. Kamozal gabe, that's why he's getting a discount. V'havar agar noterle, it's essentially a situation where he is paying for the delay. Essentially, the person is saying, I'm not going to owe it to you right away, and therefore I'm going to give you a better rate. It seems like ribis. But the response was, Kaven to have a beitiyua. Shmuel said, since there's a possibility it's going to spoil, sometimes there can be spoilage in the vineyard. Kegon borod o geshamim o kerech. You're going to have various weather issues. You can have hail, rain, etc. Umafsid hakol. Everything can be lost. Umekabel olav kol sveke hefsid. And so therefore, since he's accepting, meaning the buyer is accepting upon himself all kind of doubts of loss over here, lo michzi ka agar noter le. It doesn't seem like agar noter in that situation. Meaning to say again, it's not a situation of ribis. Tiyua, what does the word tiyua mean? Nira be'enai devar charot, it's like a regret. Kimo kedushin, like we find in kedushin, to'al rishonos, a person regrets his earlier deeds. That's the idea. It can come to regret over here if something should go wrong. And then the Gemara said, Umo de Rav beture, that Rav would admit that it's mutter by aksin. The way Rashi understands this is makom shebotzrin krumim b'shavarim ba'agola. Means to say a place where they use aksin and they use wagons in order to harvest the vineyards. Umolichen es ha'agola ben shuros ha'krumim, and the wagon goes among the rows of the vineyards. Umiskalglin ragle hashvarim be'koloche shoroshim shebekarkav efseid Rav. And so therefore, it's treading all over it. You have a lot of damage and loss possible. That's why he admits in that situation. So the way Rashi understands is Moderav Beture is talking essentially still about a kerem, still about a vineyard. And the Gemara continues, Amar lo Shmuel lahanu de shivshei shivsha. Shmuel said to the shivshei shivsha, we'll see Rashi in a moment, Hafocha be'ara, he said you should turn over the land, work the land, ki echi dekani lechu gufa diar, in order that you acquire the land, v'lo, and if not, have lechu kalva, it's like a loan, v'aser, and it will be forbidden. We'll note over here before we see Rashi that in the girsa we have in our Gemara, the idea is that they're acquiring the land. Rashi seems to have a slightly different girsa. Rashi explains shivshei shivsha, ba'alei batim hamalvim tvu arisim. We're talking about the owners who lend the grain to the arisim, to the sharecroppers, lazera, and they're going to plant. Umesham lahem legoren tvu chadash, and at the time of the goren, they're going to pay them in a new grain. Essentially, it's a situation where they're taking grain and giving back grain, which is normally a problem of sa'ah b'sa'ah. You're taking a certain amount of wheat, let's say, and giving back that amount of wheat. There could be fluctuations in price. And so therefore the advice was, Sayu begufa diari, you see here the different girsa. It's not that you're going to acquire the land, but you should help out with the land, meaning he's telling the owners, don't have the sharecropper do all of the work. You should do some of the work. Becharish uvakatzer mad, you should do some of the plowing, some of the harvesting. And that way, since you're doing the work, it's not going to be a problem of sa b'sa. It's not going to be a situation where they're giving you a little more back because of interest, but really you're helping out with the work, and therefore you're being compensated in that sense, because otherwise otherwise it's considered to be like a loan of sa b'sa, and that would be a problem. So this is a way to avoid that problem. And we'll take a look at Tosas as well. The shivshei shivsha perish bekuntras. Rashi explains balei batim. We're talking here about the owners. Hamalvim tvu larisim lazera meshamalem lagoren tvu chadasha. Again, they lend the grain, and the sharecroppers are going to plant it, and they'll pay them at the time of the goren. We don't find anywhere, says Tosas, where this is called shivshei. And Tosas continue, Varach Perish Rabbeinu Chananel explains, Shenosin Mos Labal Hazmuros Bekach Vekach Hamasui Veim Shavim Yoser B'Shas Shezomer Hakramim. What's actually happening is the buyers are advancing the money. They're giving the money early at a discounted rate, and by the time they get back the produce, it's going to be worth more at that point in time. Now, in general, we say that's okay because there's an assumption of risk. However, Veleka Tiyua Bizmuros Kimo Beperi, when it comes to these muros, when it comes to these branches, there's less of a possibility of loss like there is by produce, and so therefore, again, because they're advancing the money, they're getting a discounted rate when they finally get back what it is that they are buying, and so you have a problem over here of a possibility of ribis. Therefore, Shmuel requires that they turn over the land, and again, according to what Rabbeinu Chananel is saying, the idea could be that they're turning over the land to become partners in the land. By becoming partners in the land, they avoid the problem of ribis. And the Gemara continues, Amarlu Rava lahanu demintri bagi. Rava said to those who were guarding the crops in the fields, Poku hafochu bebeidari, go to the threshing floor and turn over the crops over there. Ki hechi delo teshtalim schiras didchu ada yishaita. That way you won't be owed your wages until that moment. The schiras eina mishtalemes ela basof, because the wages are paid at the very end of the work. Vahi shaita ozoli tekam mozle gabaychu, and therefore at that point in time, that's when you'll get the discounted rate, and it won't be a problem of ribis. And Rashi explains, Minteri Bagi Shomer HaKamas Harakatzer, again, they watch over the stalks in the field until the harvest. And so he advised them, Hafochu bebeidari, sayu es b'nei habika, bedisha as tvua begorn. You should help them out at the threshing floor. Ba'ulachu v'ava, when they're bringing. Siyu apports a little bit of help. Lefisha b'shvil sh'atem mamtinim secharchem ad gemar meruach agoren. Because of the fact that you wait to get paid until that time when it's on the threshing floor, heim nosnim lochem matana yosra al secharchem. They actually end up paying you a little more than they really should be paying you because of the fact that there's a delay. And so that's a problem of ribis. Therefore, sayu osam, what you should do is help them out even at that point. That way your work will extend until the end of the work by the granary. And the wages really are meant to be paid at the end of the work. So then there's no delay. And therefore, if they pay you a little extra, it's not like they're paying you for the delay. And it's not like they're paying you more for the fact that there was a delay in owing you the wages, in paying you the wages. Rather, they're just giving you a good rate. They're paying you a little bit higher, but there's no delay if you continue to work for them, and therefore it's not a problem of ribis. And the Gemara continues, Amru le Rabbanan l'Rava, the Rabbanan said to Rava, Ka'achil ma ribis, the master is consuming ribis, meaning you, Rava, are taking interest. Why? T'kuli alma shakli arba misalki le'arisa b'nisan, because everybody else takes 4, and they remove the sharecropper in Nisan. But the master, natar lehu ad iyar, you wait until iyar to take your payment. V'shakil shisen, you take 6, and so therefore, essentially, because of the fact that you're giving them more time, you're taking a higher pay, isn't that a problem of ribis? Isn't that a problem of interest? Amar Lui said to them, Atun ka'avdisun shalokadin, you're actually doing what's improper. Ara la'aris mishtabid, because really the sharecropper, he essentially has a lien, he has control over the property while he's working it. Iatun misal kisulu benisan, now if you remove the sharecropper in Nisan, you're removing him early, mafsedisu luhu bekama, so then he actually loses out, he doesn't have enough time to profit from the field properly. Anon natarna lu ad iyar, I wait for them until iyar, I give them time to really make money off the field, and so therefore there's a certain amount of profit in that, and that's why they pay me more, because they have more time to make money to work the field. And Rashi explains, Kuli Alma, everybody, Hachochrim Sadosem Larisa, meaning everybody that gives over their field to these sharecroppers who are going to give them back a fixed amount. So Shakli Arba Kurin Bechakiras Asada. Everyone takes 4 kur. Umisalki Larisa Benisan, and they say the sharecropper should leave the field in Nisan. Kofin Osam Liktor Tvuasa, they say you have to harvest in Nisan. Istalik Mimena Benisan, get out of the field by Nisan, and you'll give me the 4 kur. Umar Mishum Denotar Layadir, but the master, meaning you, Rava, because of the fact that you don't take anything from them until Iyar, so Shakal Shisa, you actually take more, you take 6 kur. Because Al Gadaitach Mishum Hamtanas HaChakiris Kamosvi. And they thought that the idea was, since he's delaying and saying, you don't have to pay me right away, so it's like a loan, that's why they're paying more, so it's a problem of ribis. But he said that's not what's happening at all. Atanu Davdi, so Shalokadin, you're doing what's improper. Shatem Misalkin Osam Benisan, you remove the sharecroppers in Nisan. Viadayin Lo Nismalis Hatvu Bekoshen, still, the grain is not still fully ripened. Umafsidin Osan Harbe, they lose a lot. Really, the sharecropper is entitled to work the land until everything's fully ripened. Called sarcha, till it's fully ripened. So therefore, what you're doing is really not proper. I wait until I take essentially a portion of the profit of my field. It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm delaying, and that's why I'm taking more. It has to do with the fact that now they're able to make more out of the field, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Beis.